Our state has some incredible problems. My name is Lynn Hinderrocker. I'm here to talk about that with you and talk about the trends that have shaped this state and dragged us in one direction or another. We're not really we're not realizing the dream we had way back in the early 2000s or even around 2008 or 9 or 10. My name is Lynn Hinderrocker. Welcome to WOWBIZ Nebraska. We're going to get it on right now. Is your organizational culture out of whack? Does it feel a little bit distorted? Morale issues, employee issues, sometimes management doesn't seem like they're on the same page? Well, welcome to WOWBIZ Nebraska. We're going to address that issue today with an expert in that particular area. Thanks for joining us here on WOWBIZ Nebraska. I'm Lynn Hinderrocker, and my guest today is Dr. David Thomas. David, what a pleasure to see you.
No, pleasure to be here. Thank you.
We're going to talk about your book here, but first of all, I want to acknowledge that we do have two great sponsors for WOWBIZ Nebraska. The first one is Curzon Promotional Graphics. We'll talk to you more about them later on. They've been with us since the very beginning of the show. You want to utilize them for creative development as well as production. They work around the entire country. That's C-U-R-Z-O-N, Curzon Promotional Graphics. The second fantastic sponsor of WOWBIZ Nebraska is Alpha Tech One. Alpha Tech One actually takes a page from the food and restaurant delivery industry, and they will come to your office or to your home, pick up your computer, go back, get it fixed, and deliver it back to you. The ultimate convenience. You just don't see that in the computer repair industry. So we are happy to have Alpha Tech One with us as well. All right, let's get back to David Thomas and talk about some of the snafus that are particular to this era in organizational development and leadership and so on. David, I'm going to hold up your book. We're going to start out for obviously talking about your book. It's the culmination, I think I would say, maybe of 30 years of work, something like that?
Yes.
Okay, so it's called Human Development and the Theater of Everyday Life. Very intriguing, and it's on Amazon, is that correct?
It's on Amazon, certainly.
Outstanding. So there's a great looking book, and I want to make sure that everybody understands what the title of the book is so you can go pick it up or check it out after you see this particular show. All right, David, tell me, what is this? The whole thing here has to do with ethics, and I know that's something that you've been working with and playing with for a long, long time. Tell me about the ethics, how we should be behaving with each other, so to speak, and for maximal fulfillment in our career as well as getting stuff done. What's the whole deal there?
Well, let me, if I may, Lynn, just go back those 25 years or 30 years.
Yeah.
I was at that time doing workshops on imagination and creativity.
Yes, I remember them well.
I had a number of artists who supported my work, and I would share their work in an effort to help participants feel their imagination at work and play.
Yes.
And it did not get traction. And I was with a friend one day, and I said, I'm not sure why. Maybe I'm not going enough to the heart of things. And he said, well, I think it is ethics that goes most to the heart of things. So I went home that afternoon and I began typing and studying. And in the course of that study, I came across the fact that the Japanese define ethics as human logic, the logic by which we become more thoroughly, fully human.
Human logic, I love that.
And what I then attempted to do, and is detailed in this book, is give body and detail to that human logic.
Yes.
And what came out of it were 12 ethics. These 12 ethics, as I am calling them, of human development.
Right.
Now I know the focus of this show, and I want to serve that. And I think it would be also proper and appropriate to call them the 12 ethics of collaboration and teamwork.
There you go.
The ethics of personal responsibility.
Right.
At base, these 12 ethics are an elaborated work ethic. To behave in accord with them, I'm arguing, not only serves the organization, but evolves the self.
And that is so interesting. There have been some books and some research that have been released really only recently talking about personal growth or personal development of employees, not as just being frosting on the cake, but being integral to the financial success of a company. And that's kind of a breakthrough, and there are actually a lot of kind of skeptical business leaders around today saying, well, I don't want to get into all that stuff, all that soft stuff. We just get the project, we know we got to get done, we go get it done, we don't worry about all the other stuff. And towards the end of the show, I want to come back to that topic a little bit because you're right in the middle of that whole thing. Now, the bottom half of this book here is called The Theater of Everyday Life. Could you elaborate on that for just a minute?
Well, it's entitled that because we are, all of us, going from one theater to the next, so to speak.
Yes. Well, this would be an obvious theater.
Yes.
more obviously, or less obviously, I guess, would be the workplace would be.
Yes. The workplace, certainly. The family, the volunteer center,
Yeah.
the community at large,
Yeah.
all a theater wherein how we choose to behave
Yeah.
affects both the organizations of which we're a part,
Right.
as well as our own development.
Sure. So go a little deeper there. I mean, when we fully understand that point, do we behave differently when we realize that we are, what we're doing right now, the context, I think, is what you're talking about. When we're more aware of the context and the theater, do we act more genuinely or more artificially? I mean, what's the outcome of that realization?
Well, I think what it ultimately all is about is this growing consciousness or awareness about where we are, what we're doing, what we stand for, and the importance of behaving in accord with what we stand for. And to not do so increasingly is self-destructive, we realize, but it is also a blow to the solar plexus.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we don't want to be a person who fails to live up to what they say they believe in.
And we don't want to be out of alignment with our core values. Is that
Yeah,
am I on track there?
No. I think that's a very good way to say it. And we want to be able to serve if the organization of which we're a part, the workplace, is worthy. We've chosen to join it because we believe it's worthy of the life we have to give it.
Yeah.
Then we want to serve its core values and mission as creatively as we can.
Now, when somebody reads the book and kind of dives into this broader notion of our behavior and our beliefs and so on, do you think, how do I say this, that we really know what our belief system is? I mean, it's impossible to act in accord with our beliefs if we don't really have a clear idea of our belief system.
Well, it's certainly the case that we spend a good deal of our time growing up, figuring out what we believe in, what's worthy of our time and energy.
Yeah.
But as we get an inkling of it, we also get a real keen sense of the importance of behaving in accord with what we do know we stand for.
And I think this is, now we come to the word authenticity, which is increasingly popular these days. The millennials seem to emphasize it a lot in their communication. Let's be authentic with each other. Is that what you think they're getting at?
Yes.
Okay.
I think absolutely. And I think everybody is interested in that in themselves and in those with whom they're involved.
Sure. You know, theater, of course, I'm very interested in it. I kind of came up in theater when I was in my younger years. And there is also a paradigm of self-development that has to do with mindfulness and detachment. So that when you realize that you're in a theater environment, or maybe you're selling to somebody. Well, that's a theater, right? And so on. And is that part of this? In other words, stand back and look and see yourself interacting with other people in this situation. Does that give some greater sense of self-awareness and calm and non-judgmental? You know where I'm going on that?
I mean, I think it definitely does. Now that begins to dive us in, I'm not surprised, it begins to dive us more deeply into all of this.
Yeah.
Now, give me the moment and I'll see if I can take us there. One of the things that we talk about in the book is William Blake's double vision.
Oh, I can't believe that you brought up William Blake. I was going to bring him up at the very beginning when you were talking about imagination, and this man was a truly special human being. So go ahead, I'm sorry.
And his notion of double vision was that after a certain point where you become increasingly aware of yourself and your surroundings, you are paying attention, you realize that what you are seeing or touching or choosing to support reveals to you as much about you and what you value as it does about what is available to be seen or touched or valued.
Yes.
So you are continuously, now to come back to your point, in a world where there is self-reflection.
Yes.
You are forever getting a glimpse of yourself.
Yes.
And so that is important feedback.
Yeah, it's very, very important feedback. You know, in leadership training, there's a type of training that talks about the kinds of leaders that exist out there today. And it's a rather sad statistic. About 60% of so-called managers or leaders are not self-reflecting. And as a result of that, you see them being very reactive, knee-jerk, mechanical behavior. Something bad happens, they yell at this guy, get it together, something over here. So when you call on these people on the phone, they'll say, well, I'm just putting out fires today. And they're not reflecting at all. Then there's another 30% that are more capable of detaching a bit and taking a pause and trying to see the integration, how everything all is related, which is a broader view. And then the final 10% of the leaders in this particular kind is the people who are not afraid to question their own belief system all the way through their life, saying, am I behaving from a belief system that is no longer serving me? And that's a very interesting, that's the kind of dialogue that would take place as related to this human development we're talking about right here.
Well, eventually our discussion takes us into those 12 ethics.
Yes.
One of which is the open-mindedness ethic. So that one is living always with a certain degree of doubt and openness to certainty. Or openness to the fact that certainty is not far from rigidity. And rigidity is the opposite of creativity.
Yes, so it's so true. And creativity is the key to effective leadership. But it's not touted that way, by the way. It's really not thought of in that context. Let's get back to these ethics. Can you whip them off or focus on some more of these 12? I think they're so fascinating.
Well, there's the organizational ethic. There are 10 corollaries to that. But the organizational ethic basically says that it is ethical to serve, refine, and advance the organization you have chosen to join, unethical to harm it.
Yes.
And then those 10 corollaries go into what it means to serve and advance the organization you've chosen to join.
That would be a program or a sub-program in itself, how to serve your organization ethically and move it forward. David Thomas, this has been a wonderful beginning to this dialogue. If you don't mind, I'm going to talk for 2 seconds about our sponsors who have played a critical role in pulling us together here, and then we'll continue on with this fascinating dialogue. Once again, we're going to hold up the book here so that everybody understands. I'm talking to Dr. David Thomas here about human development and the theater of everyday life as it pertains to organizational development and businesses and employment and worker fulfillment. These are all huge issues today, and David's insights are extremely helpful and very timely, of course. But I do want to mention Alpha Tech One. They're a computer repair firm here in the Omaha, Nebraska area. They do something nobody else has done. They will come to your office or your home, get your computer, take all the wires out, whatever it takes, take it back to their facility, repair it, let you know in advance what it's going to cost, of course. If you say that's too much money, for instance, and that does happen sometimes, they'll bring it all the way back to your office and say thanks for the opportunity to take a look inside your computer. That's an amazing service, an amazing convenience, very time-saving. So please do not forget alphatech1.com. Secondly, of course, is Curzon Promotional Graphics. They've been with us for a long time. They're outstanding. I personally have used them for many of my clients. They design, they have ideas, and there are not many people out there that can both create and then go off and attend to the detailed production associated with these kinds of graphics, backdrops, signs, all kinds of things, massive and very small either way. So please keep Curzon Promotional Graphics WOWBIZ.com in mind as well. Those are our two sponsors. We're thrilled to have them, and we're thrilled to have you right here on WOWBIZ Nebraska. So thank you so much for being here. Now we're going to return to a fascinating conversation with David Thomas. David, so let's continue on with these 12 ethics that constitute a big part of the book, of course. You talked for a minute. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us about the organizational ethics? What are the toughest part of being ethically? How do you serve your organization? Give me one good example, other than just doing your job and showing up on time and trying to fulfill your job description. Is there anything else that we should be thinking about?
Well, all 10 are related to it.
Yeah.
The first corollary says that it is ethical to learn as much as you can about your organization.
There you go.
To not remain organizationally ignorant.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things, you are more likely to serve your organization if you understand it and know what it might need.
Yeah.
Plus, you do not want to wake up in 5 or 10 years and discover that you have been serving something you don't believe in.
Yeah. That's so true.
Corollary 8 says that it is ethical to evolve the organization, unethical not to help the organization evolve.
Well, now you see we step into an interesting area, because people will say, well, now you're thinking about change, and what if we change the company and then I lose my job because I no longer fit into the spectrum of the work and so on. Change is a bad thing. I just want to sit here in my cube and make sure I get my paycheck at the end of the week.
And this program would say that that is ultimately self-destructive.
Yeah.
That what you really want to do is creatively interact with the mission of the organization. Now, you may have nothing more than a single form that comes across your desk, but it might be that you make work easier for people downstream were you to revise it slightly. Mm-hmm. And that is improving the organization. There are many ways, and of course, depending on where you are in the organization, sure, you can look for your opportunities.
Sure. You know, there are many employees out there today who are not fulfilled by their job, as you know. And in fact, it's gotten to an extreme situation in some particular cases. People feel disregarded or tossed aside. There are young people that are overwhelmed with college debt. In the rural areas, we have suicides that are increasing precariously and so on. And I would just ask you, how does a person that is slogging through their career, doesn't see any particular new direction to take, how can this book and what you're sharing with me be of value to them?
Well, I certainly want to express what understanding I can of the situation you're talking about. Yeah. It can be very, very rough. Yeah. And there are certain circumstances, societally speaking, yes, that are beyond the reach of one to affect, let's just say. Yeah. But even so, an elaborated work ethic that has you working as fully and as effectively as you can for the organization you've chosen, never is of disadvantage to you. Yeah. Now, it may mean that you leave that organization. It may even mean that your innovations make the organization no longer quite as relevant for you as it was.
Correct.
But you will have at least continued to exercise your muscles so that you can, going to the next organization, creatively interact with that from the start.
And maybe climb on a different theater or climb onto a different stage. That's an interesting thing, as a matter of fact. Have you noticed, by the way, on the web, of course, we talk about platforms. Everything is a platform. Google and Facebook are platforms. Here we're talking about a theater. A theater is a platform. It's a very interesting idea, because when you're on a theater, you are able to, on a platform, you're exchanging energy with multiple people and parties. And you become something different when you climb off, by the time you climb off the platform. I think it's kind of consistent with this.
And to bring it back to your theme of culture.
Yeah.
That culture is really made up of the give and take that goes on between all of the various parts.
And your book, excuse me for interrupting you, is articulating how we should be doing that, rather than just kind of saying, well, just give it your best shot and see what happens. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
The free choice ethic It basically goes after this notion, we hear it mentioned a lot, of bad faith. And bad faith has a very specific meaning in this program. It means pretending something is mandatory when it is in fact voluntary. And we, many of us, we can find ourselves after years in the same organization, the organization we've chosen to be a part of and to serve.
Right.
Walking the halls, entering meetings, taking on the tasks of the day,
Yes.
like somebody is making us do them.
Yes.
And that is,
We forget that we have free choice. Is that what you're suggesting?
yes.
Yes, yes. That's what the existentialists came up with, wasn't it? It's Jean-Paul Sartre and all that. Every moment is a choice, etc.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's certainly the case. I want to go back to your other point about some of us in certain situations that are really deplorable and hard to deal with.
Yeah, yeah.
But we hurt ourselves to the extent that we make victims of ourselves.
Yeah.
There are victims in this world, but we hurt ourselves unnecessarily
Yeah.
when we conclude we are a victim, when in fact it's bad faith we're exercising.
That's a tough reality for a lot of people because they feel like victims. In fact, probably all of us at one time or another in our life feel like a victim, like we have no choice. We have to go do that. We have to take this crappy job to make enough money to keep the lights on. I mean, there are people that are in that situation, of course. What do we do here? Do we say there's more to life than what you're currently experiencing? Do we say be courageous and go on and reinvent your life somewhere else and just don't worry about what may or may not happen? What's your advice to people like that coming out of this book?
Well, the advice basically is that we serve ourselves and every system or organization of which we're a part.
Yes.
By continuing to strengthen our ability to create and live in accord with our espoused values.
Mm-hmm.
We do not harm anything in that effort.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it may mean that there are hard choices coming our way as a consequence,
Yes.
but hopefully we have been building up the strength to address them.
That's another book, how to build up the strength internally to address the barriers to your own evolution. That's a big deal.
You know, there is in racing, horse racing,
Yeah.
I understand,
Yeah.
there is this notion that when a jockey comes to that final turn before the end line,
Yeah.
that she will sense the strength of the horse and so on. And at
Whether they've got it in them to go.
and they will raise their voice, the whip, the reins.
Yes.
And in jockey speak, that is called posing the question. And it's a lovely, lovely notion. And part of what we're trying to do with this book is help people recognize those moments in organizational life that are posing the question.
Yes. Oh, I love this. What a wonderful way to end this dialogue, posing the question.
Yes.
That is so wonderful, David. Thank you so much. What one piece of advice, succinctly now, if you were talking to the president of a largish company, what would you suggest to that person, a man or woman, that comes out of this book? What one piece is it? Pose the question more frequently.
Well, and as it turns out, the question is posed sometimes more frequently than we would like.
Yeah.
But I would say that the first task always is to assess yourself
Yeah.
with respect to each one of these ethics.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then begin, this book is my attempt to help.
Yes.
Then begin the process of trying to evolve that culture
Right.
in a direction that serves its mission and, by implication, the people that are a part of it.
Yes. Do you think we know ourselves well enough to assess ourselves, David? Or do we need an outside person with some kind of objective perspective?
Well, I mean, it's all over the place. Yes, everybody's got a view of themselves.
Yeah.
And then with a little bit of prompting, that view can get more exact. And from there, one is in the process.
You know, there's a line of thought that's increasingly popular today, which is comes out of the Tony Robbins school of no limits, right? Unlimited behavior, unlimited potential. But there's another school of thought that says man is mechanical, man is really mostly a robot, victim of his behaviors or of habits, I guess is what I'm trying to say. They're two very different philosophies. Where do you fall on that spectrum?
This book, These Ethics, the human logic at its base,
Yeah.
is about not giving your life over to the robot self. It is about finding your creative limits, which are going to vary from someone else's.
Yes.
But in the end, and this is something I know that you care about, in the end, it is through creative work, I think, that you get the most job satisfaction.
Yes, yes. But you have to balance that between serving the world or serving the customer or whatever and serving yourself. And that's an interesting balance. Hopefully it'd be the same, it balances out and you can make other people happy while at the same time doing everything you're absolutely possibly, capable of doing.
Yes. Yes.
Wonderful. Such a great pleasure to see you again,
my pleasure.
old friend.
Yes.
You've come a long, long ways. You've done a lot of things, and we have great respect for Dr. David Thomas. Here's that book again, Human Development in the Theater of Everyday Life. It's on Amazon. It's an outstanding book. You know that now as a result of watching this dialogue today. Thanks again for watching us here on WOWBIZ Nebraska. I'm Lynn Hinderrocker. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.